Good morning, everyone. We will be getting started here in just 1 minute. Rich, can I get a sound check? Can you hear me okay? Can anyone on the panel confirm they can hear me?
I can hear you, Natalie.
Great. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this webinar titled Funding Pathways for Energy Savings Projects in North Carolina. My name is Natalie Narin, and myself, along with my colleague Hayward Fain, will be your hosts for this webinar. We are both with the State Energy Office of North Carolina and serve as the public co-chair for the North Carolina chapter of the Energy Services Coalition. We are so glad you're here and really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us for this conversation. So just want to review a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded. The link to the recording, as well as the slide deck, will be sent to all registered participants within the next few days, hopefully prior to the holiday weekend. If you could add any questions you have throughout the presentation to the chat box, and we will address them as time permits during the question and discussion portion of the webinar towards the end. Feel free to drop them in at any time. You don't need to wait until the end to do that. As mentioned, this webinar is presented by the North Carolina chapter of the Energy Services Coalition, or ESC. We are a public-private partnership between the State Energy Office, which is a division within the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and various energy service companies that are active around North Carolina. We are collectively dedicated to providing an outreach program that provides information and education on performance contracting to various audiences within the state. Additionally, our goal is to promote the use of performance contracting as a means of increasing energy efficiency, modernizing infrastructure, enhancing resilience, and improving environmental quality. This webinar will address performance contracting how-tos, as well as information on additional funding sources available through federal, state, and utility funding programs to address energy efficiency and renewable energy needs in the public sector. So I wanted to take a moment to introduce our speakers today. We have Hayward Fain, who is the public co-chair and part of the Utility Savings Initiative program within the State Energy Office. Myself, Natalie Narin, are also part of the Utility Savings Initiative program within the State Energy Office. We have Alyssa Watkins, Senior Account Executive for Sustainability Business at Schneider Electric. We have Kim Smith, Sustainable Infrastructure with Johnson Controls, and Jeff Colm, Energy Services and Government Leasing with Bank of America. So running through our agenda real quick, we have an update from the State Energy Office, which I will be reviewing here in just a moment. We have a performance contracting overview from Schneider Electric, funding and incentive opportunities to leverage for performance contracting, which Johnson Controls will be presenting, performance contracting project finance options that Bank of America will be presenting, and then some final how to get started and next steps from the State Energy Office. And as mentioned previously, we will have hopefully a pretty robust questions and discussion portion. And again, please feel free to use the chat function for that. You are also welcome to take yourself off of mute if you would prefer to ask your question verbally at that time. All right, so running through a State Energy Office update, do we have Hayward on the line? Okay, so I will go ahead and take this portion. So for those of you who are not aware, the Utility Savings Initiative program was first established in 2002 as a comprehensive energy and water management system to help address unusually tight budgets in the state of North Carolina. So our mission of UC is to protect and improve North Carolina's environment and transition to a clean energy economy through identifying various energy conservation measures, assisting local and state-owned buildings with their energy reduction goals, providing various types of technical assistance to the public sector, as well as overseeing performance contracting, which we will get into more details on this webinar. In total, we serve a lot of different entities throughout every part of the state, including 14 state agencies, 21 UNC institutions, 58 community colleges, and many K through 12s, counties, as well as municipalities throughout the state. So a few primary directives that we have in the UC program at the State Energy Office. Part of that is General Statute Chapter 143-64.12. I know that's a mouthful. These are live links, so when you get the slide deck after this presentation, I would encourage you to click on it and read through it. The goal for state-owned buildings within this general statute is to reduce energy consumption by 30% from a 2002-2003 baseline by 2015. It also requires utility consumption reports from all state agencies, universities, and community colleges. So we're actually just in the process of we're going to begin to start that collection process this summer, and we will have a report available at the end of this year that reviews all of those consumption reports that we'll be receiving and analyzing. It also requires strategic energy management plans for agencies and universities. So Executive Order 80 really built upon the EUI goal that was established in general statutes, and it furthered that energy consumption goal to 40% from 02-03 levels by 2025. So that's really where we get most of our directive from, is the most recent Executive Order 80, which was signed in October of 2018. All right, so jumping to the ESPC campaign for North Carolina. This is a recent campaign that the Department of Environmental Quality joined in January of this year. And it engages states, local governments, K through 12s, universities, and many other stakeholders to support, expand, and enhance performance contracting in the state. And it should be noted that performance contracting has been going on for a long time in this state, really since about 1984. This is a vetted process that has a long history in North Carolina and is used regularly on the federal level as well. Really the goals of this campaign is to collectively achieve $1 billion in measured and verified savings for participants nationally. So we're really excited to be a part of this campaign, and we're working with DOE currently to establish our own unique goals and priorities for the campaign, with the ultimate goal really being to form and maintain and build upon the robust and thriving ESPC market that we have seen in the past in North Carolina and that we hope to maintain in the future moving forward. So our role in performance contracting has many different paths, and I'll just discuss a few of those here. As mentioned in the previous slide, there is some relevant legislation. Again, these are live links, so feel free to click on them when you receive the deck. There are a lot of different sources of where we get the ability to provide this type of technical assistance through performance contracting. So I would encourage you to read through that as you are able. But really our main goal is to provide technical assistance and guidance to any public entity that's interested in pursuing performance contracting in the state. This can be a complicated process, which is why we're here today to talk to you and to have a panel of folks from the Energy Services Coalition and some of the very active ESCOs in the state to help you better understand the process. Part of what we also do is we maintain a qualified provider list of energy service companies in the state. We do a recertification process every 3 years. We are actually in the process of about to start that for 2024 later this year, so more to come on that. We provide annual reports to the legislature on the progress of ESPCs. So are these performance contracts actually meeting the mark in terms of what they guaranteed in savings, and making reports to the legislature on how those are going. We are, as I mentioned, working on sector-specific ESPC guidance as part of the campaign and working to establish other goals as well. And we also, of course, are active in the North Carolina Energy Services Coalition as public chair to really help bring all of these worlds together. A quick update on funding within North Carolina. As many of you may be aware, there is a historical amount of federal funding coming down to North Carolina and to many states across the country. The most notable one I will point out is the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. We applied for $200 million for this funding back in April. We are still waiting to hear on whether we've been awarded. It's a huge program. There's a lot to discuss on it. We could have a 90-minute webinar just on CPRG, but it is something, if you are hearing about it and want to know more, definitely check out DEQ's website on CPRG, and there is a lot more information on what's to come and certain types of eligible entities that may be a part of that. So definitely keep an eye out for updates there. We also have the 40101D Grid Resilience Grant. The RFP is live, so I can't speak a ton on it, but it is $46 million over the next 5 years. It is mostly for utilities, so that RFP link is live as well. Solar for All, we were recently awarded $156 million from EPA. This is to install solar installations on low-income households throughout the state. They are currently about to start a one-year planning process for that, so you probably won't see actual installations until mid to late 2025. We also have the home efficiency and home electrification rebates that total a little over $200 million. We are currently working on those applications as we speak, and those will be very transformational for the state for both energy efficiency as well as electrification rebates. There's also various training programs. The first is the training for residential energy contractors, as well as energy auditor training. As you might imagine, there are a lot of workforce needs that are going to come with these grants, particularly Solar for All, as well as the home energy rebate programs. So these grants are designed to help really build that workforce that's going to be needed to help push those programs forward and make them successful. We also, of course, have the Weatherization Assistance Program that's been around for some time that helps weatherize and retrofit low-income households to make them more energy efficient. And the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, we have been awarded funding. We are working through our plan for that and hope to have an update sometime this summer. So wrapping things up here on our end, just some contact information for us and for the resources we provide. These are live links, so feel free to check out our website. I would also encourage you to stay informed by signing up for DEQ and specifically Energy Office updates. There is a link there for that as well, so you will be updated. For example, if and when we are awarded CPRG funding, this is a good place to make sure you're up to date with that information. And of course, feel free to call or email us at the State Energy Office at any time, and we will be happy to assist. I will turn it over to Alyssa.
Good morning, and thank you, Natalie. I'm Alyssa Watkins, as Natalie indicated, with Snyder Electric, and I'm going to cover the performance contracting overview section. Natalie, you can go ahead and proceed. So, for those of you that maybe have not done a performance contract or have not been looking into it, a guaranteed energy savings performance contract is basically reallocating money that you already use in your utility dollars to help you address deferred maintenance. And as we all know, deferred maintenance continues to grow annually. You're going to save energy and water savings and operational savings, and that is used to help pay for your performance contract. And we'll get into that a little bit further. The unique thing about performance contracting is it allows you to work within your existing budget. Many times you are trying to wait for capital dollars to come in. They may not come to fruition, and then you may not get the equipment replaced as needed. So this mechanism allows you to work within your existing budget and just reallocate those fundings to use towards your third-party payment. Now, this is a turnkey project in North Carolina, and there's no upfront money required. So basically, it doesn't cost the unit any money upfront. Everything that is involved with the performance contract, such as a third-party reviewer, any bond counsel or any interest on the third party payment is all covered throughout the savings of the entire project. The projects can go up to about 20 years. Many times they're at least 15, and many go to 20 years plus the construction period. The construction periods can run from anywhere from like 12 months to as long as 24 months on these performance contracts. So basically, the performance contract you're using as a tool, a financing tool, to get the infrastructure products that you need and use your energy savings to help pay for this project. If you want to go to the next one. And this is just a quick snapshot of what your current budget may look like right now without doing a performance contract. You have energy inefficiencies from your antiquated equipment, buildings that may not have controls, or controls may be obsolete. So you're working in an energy inefficiency area. And then you also have the energy that you're spending wisely. So right now, with the light blue and the dark blue on your left-hand side of this table, this will be your total operation budget. So you may be not utilizing the energy as well. So this is your total spend. So at this point, you say, do I can continue operating the way I am today? Can you make changes to be more energy efficient? And then how do you make these improvements, and what can that money fund? And as Natalie was talking about, there's a lot of grants and money out there that may be available. There's also federal grants as well that you can help make your dollar go further. So again, do you mind borrowing the money? It's a third party loan with a performance contract. However, everything is covered with energy and operational savings, with very small of it being operational and maintenance savings. Natalie, you go to the next one. So many people, this is how you could look after, the before and after your utility bill, and then your operations, the way you're operating today. If you decide to look at a performance contracting, then the money that you save from savings will help pay the financial payment, and then your utility bill is decreased. So you're using those two mechanisms and your operations budget to have a new type of way that you're spending your operations dollars. A lot of people will try to do projects themselves, or they'll piecemeal them, and this leads to loss of energy savings. So this can hurt that. So again, you're using your utility and operational savings, you're reinvesting back into your own facilities. And that helps you with your capital improvement plans, because many times you do not get the funding, or counties and may have to go out for bonds, and this helps reduce that need at times. So you can use a performance contract to help that. Again, there's little to no impact on your current budget, and if you already have had bonds out, it will not affect that because you're working on your existing operations budget. As I stated earlier, there's grants. There's also utility rebates with different utilities. So as you select your energy services company, which is called an ESCO, as you select that partner, they will help you look for grants and utility rebates and help you obtain those as part to become all-inclusive with your performance contract. And so again, this is a fixed price. So there's that's not typical to your regular construction that you're doing or regular purchases of capital projects. So you are fixed price, no change orders. That'd be something unique for individuals who are used to doing general contracts. A lot of times you have cost overruns, and when you're doing a performance contract, it will fit within your budget. And again, no change orders, no upfront money, which I think is ideal for you. So we'll go to the next one. So what can you expect? What types of improvements can you get when you do a performance contract? And the list has generated, gotten bigger over many years. In the late 90s, North Carolina was already doing performance contracting. And then in 2002, as Natalie indicated earlier, that's when the Energy Office started helping oversee the performance contracting going on in North Carolina. The unique thing and good thing about when you're looking for different energy conservation measures, which are called ECMs, you can expand your building controls. Many buildings that I see and have seen for 29 years may have antiquated controls. They may have them jumped out. You may have a building running 24/7. So a performance contract can help you do that. You can improve your HVAC, your indoor air quality. That seems to be a big issue with us in North Carolina is, humidity and IAQ. There are still a lot of entities that don't have LED lighting. That is a significant part of the savings for you. You can look at different water conservation measures, weatherization, windows, doors, all those type of things. And you can even add the energy recovery wheels. We have started doing more cogen and adding a lot of renewables into these projects. When they first started many years ago, we couldn't even do water. So now it's really expanded over time, and it's gotten where it's really user-friendly for you, the entity. And as you're going through this, again, remember, you've got other parties out there to help support you. You've got the Energy Office, which is phenomenal at what they do. They have the templates that you can now use. So it's a standardized template. And then you will have a third-party reviewer that oversees everything that you and the partner you select as an ESCO as you're going through this project. So you'll have a third-party reviewer as well. And then finally, the Treasury Department oversees the financial portion of it as well. And Jeff will get into that further in just a few minutes. But you can see, you can put most anything the operation needs that uses any type of energy into a project and to help fund that. You'll go to the next one. So many of you will sit out there and go, well, I can do this myself, or why wouldn't I do it myself? Well, then I'll ask each of you, do you have the staff to be able to do it? Do you have the time to be able to do it? And as we all know, they expect us to do more with less on our budgets every year. So it gets tighter and tighter. If you have the funding, do you want to make your dollar go further? A performance contract can make every dollar you spend go further by the energy savings that you're utilizing. And many times our staff don't have time to even do their daily jobs. And these projects, when you have a full ESCO on site with energy teams, design teams, engineering, construction, there are a significant amount of people that are implemented into your entity to help get this program through, and it will not burden your staff. Again, you have project management that's involved, and that helps tremendously. There's also a significant amount of training that goes into a performance contracting project that helps you as you're putting in new systems. You're trained on those, your staff's trained, and we all know we have staff changeover. So when you have an ESCO, you're selecting a partner for a long-term contract. Again, as I said, it can be as long as 20 years plus the construction. So you could have a long-term commitment with someone, and they can continue to help train your staff. And what tolerance do you have for risk? Are you willing to take your capital dollars and put them in there to try to do this yourself? Or do you want to make that dollar go further and then let someone else have the headaches for you? Another unique thing about the energy performance contract is it's guaranteed. And when I say guarantee, the ESCO that you select will actually have to put a guarantee on every bit of the savings in your project. So if the savings are not realized annually, so it's not at the end of not at the end of a 15, 20-year contract, this is annually, has to be reconciled, as Natalie talked earlier. The annual reports are put out, and it's reconciled annually. And if you don't meet that savings each year, then the energy services company will have to make you whole. So therefore, if you are spending $1, you save 25% of that dollar, and you're using that to pay for your financial payments. If you were not to get that 25-cent whole, then the entity that you have selected as your partner will write that check to make you whole. So that's another unique opportunity. So when you're doing your projects on your own, are you willing to guarantee it yourself? And you're not getting that guarantee to make sure that you're realizing those savings. Okay, Natalie. So what's the cost of waiting? Again, as I stated earlier, if you're piecemealing projects, then you're losing a lot of energy savings. Whereas if you select a partner in an energy services company, they're going to go in and do a full project with you at a very quick pace. You're going to have lots of people at your fingertips to be able to help get all of this implemented for you. Construction is rising, as we all know. Our supply chain are always issues. And when you select an ESCO, they handle all of that for you. And there's not finger pointing because you have a single point of contact. As the utility rates go up, if you're not using energy efficiently, then you're wasting that much more energy on your inefficient equipment that you have now. A lot of times we all know that we'll get capital improvement requests annually. You ask for those and you may not get it all. So this is another way to be able to realize the capital improvements that you need and help you do a long-term plan on your life cycle of items that need to be replaced. And then, your boards change, personnel changes. So this is something that once you've got your partner selected, they're always here to help you, and they're always here to educate the new staff as they come on or new board members as they come on and show you the benefit of what you're realizing. If you'll go to the next one, please, Natalie. So I'm going to hand it over to Kim Smith with Johnson Controls, and she's going to talk to you about the funding incentives. But as you go away from this, just remember, if you're thinking about a performance contract, do not go ahead and do the low-hanging fruit, because that's going to hurt the energy savings that you could realize in a total project. It helps fund all these upgrades. And again, you don't have a long waiting period. You're not waiting 5 or 10 years to get a piece of equipment. You're able to identify those inefficiencies and accomplish that project in a fairly quick timeline. So the more you wait, the more you're losing in energy savings. So it, and as I stated earlier, you will hire, and then you also have the Treasury that overlooks and makes sure that it's a financially sound project. I'm going to hand it over to you for funding, Kim. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elisa, and good morning. I will be covering a variety of, well, I guess I should introduce myself. As Elisa said, I'm Kim Smith. I'm with Johnson Controls, and I'm going to be covering a variety of funding and incentive opportunities that are available for you to utilize as part of your energy savings performance contracting projects. Just a brief disclaimer, I am going to talk about some of the tax provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act that can be utilized as part of your projects. You will want to seek qualified tax counsel to fully validate your eligibility and their applicability to your project as you look to explore how you can use them going forward. Natalie, we can go to the next slide. So today I'll discuss some of the federal grants and tax incentives available to support your ESPC project, along with some of the state, local, and utility resources, and where to search for those opportunities. And I saw this slide and I really liked it. I think it helps to kind of differentiate between funding and financing opportunities. When we talk about funding, we're talking about those things that you don't have to pay back, things such as federal grants, the tax incentives. This could be funding out of your capital or operating budget, utility incentives. When we look at financing, those are the things that you actually have to pay back. So those are you can see those on the right hand at the top of the chart, any kind of external loan or the guaranteed energy savings performance contract. What I really want you to see is that these two items are not mutually exclusive, that actually by combining or stacking the funding and financing that is available, you can actually increase your project scope and expand the overall benefit you can get from your ESPC project to your organization. Go to the next slide, Natalie. So here is a list of federal grants and loans that have become available either through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which is also known as the BIL, or the Inflation Reduction Act, which is known as the IRA. Natalie has mentioned a few of these earlier, and as she said, some of them are still in the process of being awarded. So you will want to keep a lookout to see what kind of funding will be coming available as the year goes on. I did want to mention the Renew America Schools grant that is currently available. This grant is actually for energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements at public schools. It's actually a 5-year program. We are currently in the 2nd year of that application process with about $180 million to be awarded to school districts across the country. The application for the 2nd round was released at the end of April and is actually due on June 13th. It's actually changed a little bit from the 1st year, so you want to continue to monitor this opportunity as you go forward. If you, for some reason, you haven't started on the application, don't worry, you will have another opportunity probably in the spring of next year. I will not dissect this slide in detail. I really wanted to provide it as a resource so that you can go in and investigate, any of the federal application processes. And with all grant opportunities, what you want to do is make sure that, you understand the applicability of the grants, and you want to make sure that your project aligns with the mission, because many of these are going to be competitive in nature. Go to the next slide. What I want to focus most on today are the tax credits available for a variety of renewable and clean energy technologies. This tax credit was established and extended in the Inflation Reduction Act, and it was expanded beyond its traditional reach. Historically, the investment tax credit, or it's also known as the ITC, has been a major driver of all renewable energy deployments, from residential all the way to large scale utility applications. But it's historically been a tax credit which you could only take advantage of either if you had a large tax bill, but if you were historically a public municipality or university or school or hospital, you would not be eligible for the ITC. You would have to partner with somebody who could take advantage of the benefit and perhaps provide you a reduced rate as part of your PPA agreement. This has totally changed with the IRA. This now allows tax-exempt governmental entities to who do not pay income taxes to receive direct or elective payment equal to the full value of the investment tax credit direct from the Department of Treasury with a filing. So that's a huge opportunity for our public sector customers. In addition to expanding the availability of the 30% investment tax credit, the IRA also created some additional bonus adders that with qualified projects could be stacked, whereas theoretically a project could have as much of 70% of their project cost covered by the tax credits. I want you to keep in mind though that some of these adders are directly related to the location of the project, or it's also around domestic content minimums. So they're not necessarily easily achievable. So a 70% benefit is probably hard to come by, but even if you don't qualify for this, for the adders, even the base rate can have a significant impact upon your project. In addition to the investment tax credit, there was also a significant expansion to Section 179D tax deduction. This was prior to the IRA, it was about $1.88 per square foot. It can now go up to $5 per square foot. And with a lower threshold, it is now easier to qualify for than in pre-IRA times. And so this is something definitely worth exploring with your ESCO to see how it could be applied to your project. As far as the ITC, I've talked about what the benefits are, but what type of projects can you do? See, can you qualify? What type of projects actually qualify for the ITC? And so the ITC is primarily used for renewable or zero emitting technologies. This includes solar, wind, energy storage, geothermal heat pumps. You can see the list. I think what's important to note here is that these tax credits are primarily for generating technologies and not for energy efficiency upgrades. But why this is important to ESPC projects that, obviously are made up usually of energy efficiency technologies, and we always try to include renewables. It's difficult without some type of incentive, either through the utility. So having these incentives through the federal government really help you be able to grow your project and include those renewable technologies now that would otherwise be difficult to do under a typical energy savings performance contract. Also keep in mind, there's a lot of fine print in the ITC. So if you're considering implementing these projects using these subsidies, you want to work with your ESCOs, your bond councils, your tax advisors to verify all the requirements and make sure that your projects do apply and meet those requirements and will be able to achieve those benefits. It's also important to note that these payments for the tax credits do not come until after the project is installed and in operation. So you may not actually see the payment for a year to a year and a half after implementation. And this is important to note because you still have to fund the full project, but you'll be able to develop a cash flow and provide this cash infusion when it is received in that year 1 or year 2 of your payment cycle. But just know that the money's not going to be available up front, so you still have to have funding for the project. We can go to the next slide. Here's a little bit more information in regards to the 179D tax deduction. If you want to incorporate it into your performance contract. This is another benefit that is not received until after the project is installed and operating. It has to be installed and then it has to be verified and certified by an auditor. But unlike the ITC, this benefit is directly for energy efficiency measures such as lighting, HVAC, hot water controls, etc. We go to the next slide, Natalie. In addition to the federal programs, there are many state and local and utility resources that you should also explore for either funding or low interest financing that can be used as part of your project. And so the sources on the right in the chart are a good location to go search for these types of opportunities. And there are many out there. And as Natalie said, there's more funding coming through the federal government than ever before, and it is rolling down. And so some of the counties and other organizations do have funding available that was not available in prior times. In addition, most of the larger utilities offer energy efficiency rebates and incentives. And depending on the type of energy conservation measure, these incentives will either be prescribed, which means that you'll be paid based on the efficiency measure that you're implementing, or custom, which is really usually based on the reduction in either kWh or therm. But your ESCO or your utility representative will actually support you in that application process and can actually tell you what, how much that can contribute to the overall project. In addition to the rebates, there's also a lot of grant opportunities. And I know, we have grant teams. I know a lot of the public sector have grant people. So work with your grant team and explore what kind of grants are out there specifically for you because of the type of business you are or the type of improvement measures that you're implementing. And so it's a great time to look for any kind of funding that's available. Go to the next slide, Natalie. So the key takeaways that we want from this funding segment is really that the elective pay is a huge opportunity for you to consider in your projects. Rather than having to rely on a third-party owned structure like a power purchase agreement, you can now own the asset directly and achieve a greater benefit financially over the term of that asset. elective pay, with the elective pay, you do not get to monetize the depreciation benefits. And again, I think it's also to note that both the 179D as well as the ITC, you do not get that benefit until after the project is placed in service. So you have to manage that as part of the process. Definitely discuss the 179D depreciation benefit with your ESCO to see if it fits and how it fits with your project. And I think the most important thing we want to say is, really look for ways to stack the value and be creative, because every time you're able to take advantage of one of these federal, state, or utility incentives, you're able to expand the multiplier on your savings, which helps you to grow the overall scope of the project. And so this is a great opportunity. It hasn't existed all the time. And so really take advantage of these funding sources that are currently available that can really help offset the cost of these projects. And as you go to the next slide, as I close out, I just wanted to provide some useful links where you can get more information on these federal and state incentives as you explore them and see if they can apply to your project. And again, work with your ESCOs, work with your bond counsel, work with your financial advisors. They will be a great resource to you as you look to apply these to your projects. And with that, I will pass it over to Jeff, who's now going to discuss how to fund energy savings performance contracts.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you everyone for your participation in today's webinar. As Kim mentioned, my name is Jeff Colm. I manage the Energy Services Group at Bank of America. I am just on video, audio today, not video, but again, I appreciate everyone participating in this. I'm going to walk you through today 3 financing options for energy savings performance contracts for government entities in North Carolina. And before I do that, I just want to highlight for you that there is a long-standing successful history and track record of financing ESPCs in the state and across the nation, for that matter. Lenders stand ready to support and finance these projects because they are safe, high-quality assets from the lender's perspective, because they make a lot of economic sense and they have value for the government customers. Of course, I just have to caveat that that's assuming that there's nothing seriously wrong with the financials of the issuer and that in general it's a standard governmental profile. Also, I do encourage you to work with your municipal financial advisor, speak with your bond counsels, tax advisors, as Kim pointed out, for advice and counsel with regards to the financing. I'm going to be speaking just in generalizations. So the 3 options that you'll see I'm going to talk to you about are the lease purchase, the contingent rent payment program, and also an as-a-service structure. Going to the next slide for tax-exempt lease. So the first option I want to highlight for you is generally the most common method of financing, especially in North Carolina, and this is the lease purchase agreement. It's also known as an installment financing agreement, installment purchase agreement, but for today, we'll just refer to it as a lease purchase. A few features of a lease purchase. For governmental entities, the overwhelming preponderance of cases, these are tax exempt, and so that you, the issuer, can take advantage and be able to leverage your tax exempt authority to get a low tax exempt interest rate for the transaction. And this assumes that there's no commercial or private use involved in the transaction. Again, the preponderance of these transactions are financed with governments on a tax-exempt basis. But as I mentioned, speak with your tax advisor, bond counsel, muni financial advisor for additional guidance and advice. Lease purchases, to point out for you, lease purchases are a capital lease. They're not an operating lease. And what that means is, in using the comparison of financing a car, lease purchases are like a car loan, not a car lease. So like a car loan, you own the asset, you have the title, it's your asset, right? You cover the insurance. But like a car loan, the lender has a lien on the asset or the equipment as a security to back the financing. There is no residual at the end of the finance term. You don't recontract for a subsequent financial term. You don't buy out the asset at the fair market value. It's yours, And these are fully payout amortizing transactions. So again, think of it really just as a secured loan. Another feature of a government finance lease purchase is that it is a one-year renewable obligation subject to the issuer's ability to appropriate funds. If funds are not available, the agreement is terminated and the equipment is delivered to the lender with no further obligation. However, noting this is an exceedingly rare event in government finance, just to point that out. But because it is an annual appropriation obligation, voter approval is generally not required, including in North Carolina. The lender can structure the annual cash flows or the annual lease payments to match the cash flows so that they are less than or equal to the guaranteed savings by the part of the ESCO, and that's a really great feature so that these projects are, pay for themselves in essence under that structure. Also to point out, you can work with your lender to do a rate lock, and rate locks are readily available 30, 60, 90 days so that you can go through the final scope negotiations with the ESCO, work with your issuing authority for approval, and also get through the various approvals at the state, which I'll talk about just next. So you don't have to worry about interest rates changing on you at the last point of the transaction, which is, again, a very nice feature about a lease purchase transaction. In North Carolina, lease purchases are reviewed and approved by the North Carolina LGC, the local government council, or the council of state as appropriate. So there's state oversight and assistance for the financing. And as previously mentioned, the North Carolina Energy Office also has great resources and available to help. To point out, 100% financing is available, so you can finance the full project costs, including construction, implementation, cost of issuance, et cetera. Also, lease purchase can be prepayable with the lender, and you can negotiate those terms so you are able to refinance the transaction if interest rates get lower. You can pay it off if you come into some funds, you just want to pay it off. And the lender, of course, will release their lien at the end of the finance term or when it's paid off. Going to the next slide, the lease purchase diagram, and I think that this is a helpful diagram to illustrate how the contracts work. As you'll see, there are two independent contracts. The ESPC to the left between the ESCO and the customer, then to the right is the separate financing agreement between the customer and the lender. To point out, to the extent that there is a shortfall in savings, the customer needs to still pay the full financing payment to the lender, and it is up to the customer to work with the ESCO, to collaborate and work with the ESCO for receipt of that shortfall payment, okay? The second structure, and if you can flip to the next slide, the second structure I wanted to highlight for you is a much less common structure, so I won't focus too much on all of the details, but it is still an option, and option for consideration, and it does happen in North Carolina. And this structure is called the contingent payment structure. The contingent payment has features similar to a lease purchase with one primary difference. Like a lease purchase, customer still owns the assets, insures it, tax-exempt financing is still available. However, you remember how I said that in the lease purchase example from the previous slide, that the customer still makes the full payment in the event of a shortfall, and that there are separate agreements between the performance contract and the financing agreement. Here, in general, with a contingent payment structure, the financing is included as part of the ESCO contract, and the ESCO would generally assign the payments to a lender or finance the contract themselves. And this difference is the primary difference. So the difference, in short, is that the customer pays for the savings achieved. So in the event of the shortfall, they do have the right to offset payment or reduce the payment to the extent that savings aren't achieved. And again, that's in general. So why wouldn't all issuers, go for this route? Well, in general, it is a different financing risk profile. And so this generally does have a higher cost of interest rate, could be 50, 70, perhaps more basis points. And that's why it is not as common, is because it is a more costly endeavor. Finally, to talk to you about the third structure, is a as-a-service agreement model. Again, this is less common than a lease purchase, especially for government entities. So again, I'm not going to get too much in the details here, but in short, the as-a-service model is a service agreement. So a third party owns and has title to the asset, The financing is taxable. The government doesn't own the equipment. And at the end of the finance term, the customer is required to either buy the assets at the fair market value or just walk away for it and they don't own the assets, or recontract for a new service agreement period. It's up to the third party to essentially maintain and ensure this is a true privatization type of contract. It generally even has a even higher cost of financing than just the contingent payment structure, but it does have benefits, again, to the extent that you really wanted to privatize the ownership, the maintenance, the running of the energy assets. This is an option to consider. You flip to the next slide. So in general, again, wanted to walk through a financing example. And here you see with an annual utility budget of $1.5 million, as the presenters previously discussed, you can generally save between 20 and 30% through a performance contract from your utility budget. So just taking the 25%, that's $375,000 a year, assuming 16 annual payments, a rough interest rate of 4.5 tax exempt today, that would equate to an afford budget of $4.2 million project. So a lot of improvements that can be implemented to make your facilities more energy efficient, more resilient, better quality, indoor quality, et cetera. Now, to highlight, rates can and do change. And in general, these were all, general terms. As I previously mentioned, talk with your municipal financial advisor, your bond counsel, your tax counsel for additional assistance. But again, financing in general, is readily available. Multiple lenders are willing to support these types of projects because it is very high quality, because there is such economic benefits and value and sense to the customers. Okay. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Hayward at the state to walk you through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So how do you get started? So we would basically give you some tips and just some information, just how to get started and next steps in the process. So how to get started? What is the first step? So if you're going through this process, you kind of want to do some digging around. Most people who I've spoken to going through this process have a pretty good basis of knowledge of a performance contract, but maybe never kind of did it themselves. One thing, of course, you want to verify you're a candidate for performance contracting. You want to consult finance, management, and legal to ensure a stakeholder buy-in up front. Very important. You want to, of course, evaluate your current energy baseline facility needs of your buildings, connect with ESCOs, such as the ones on this line, or others in the state, or us, Utility Savings Initiative, UC program. You connect with your peers, like I just mentioned, who have had previous performance contract experience, which is very key. I think we pride ourselves here at the Energy Office, basically serving as just a consultant to bridge those gaps in the information that needs to be passed on from each project. So we had previous performance contracts, and we're looking to put together best practices just to help everybody actually just going through this process. So hopefully that helps with others, but definitely use us as a resource. Of course, review general statutes, admin code governing performance contracting, and connect with the State Energy Office for additional resources. With that said, just here at the State Energy Office, we've been an asset, like I said, to those going through the performance contracting process. UC team is basically like a consultant or a technical assistant. We have services that provide assistance in strategy, energy planning, analysis of energy consumption and costs, conducting energy audits through waste reduction partners, or making presentations and conducting workshops or webinars, such as the one we're actually on right now. So we have a lot of tools and guidance templates on our website as well to assist in any potential contract, performance contract project. But if you feel like you want to go ahead and take those first steps, feel free to reach out to us or anybody else on the call with questions, concerns, and just to get an overview. Next slide, Natalie, this for you.
All right, thank you, Hayward, and thanks to all of the presenters we've had thus far. Really appreciate everyone's input. I think this is great information, good knowledge base to have going into potentially some long-term planning when it comes to energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. There's a lot of activity out there. It's hard to keep up with. So the more you can kind of stay abreast of those changes, the better off you will be. So just some final kind of thoughts to keep in mind. And I think Elisa had mentioned this in her presentation, but it's important to not pick out your low-hanging fruit. The most obvious one of that would be lighting. Some of these lower cost, higher payback measures, such as lighting, can actually help pay for some of the more expensive, kind of more complex measures in a performance contract. So if you have gone through and kind of strategically picked all of those fruit, if you will, it may be more difficult to implement a sound performance contract because those tend to help pay for those higher cost measures, as I mentioned. So it's important to think long-term about how you are addressing each of those needs that come up and to not kind of cherry pick those higher payback measures if a performance contract is something you are interested in possibly doing. As mentioned as well, don't reinvent the wheel. So we have template contract documents that are available on our website. So please feel free to use those. Feel free to tailor them to your specific needs. Those are there for your use. And of course, if we can help address any specific needs that may not be in those template documents, we are here to assist with that as well. And the last comment I'll leave you all with is to just think of this as a team. So as the graphic on the right shows, there are a lot of stakeholders that are involved in performance contracting. It is a pretty complex process. It is a long-term commitment. There is a lot of dedication that has to go into this process. So the sooner you bring all of those folks to the table in the process, the more likely it will be successful and the more likely it will really happen. And it's important to not leave any of those folks out of the loop and to bring them in as soon as possible. As mentioned, this is really a long-term commitment, long-term dedication, and this is where the ESCO comes in to really provide a lot of those resources. If you are limited on staff, which I imagine most of you on the call probably are, this is really where they come in to help provide those additional resources to make the project successful. So just some final things to keep in mind. All right, so we will now move to the question and discussion portion of the webinar. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if all of the panelists could come on camera, we will address the questions we've received in the chat. And I will maybe have Graham head us off with some of those questions to start with, and we will answer them as a panel as best we can.
Absolutely. So we have several really great questions in the chat. The first one I will probably direct to Jeff. What was the interest rate differential between lease purchase versus contingent payment structure of ESPC?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. It can depend, but in general, the interest rate difference might be 50 basis points, 70 basis points, potentially a little higher. It is significant. There definitely is a delta associated with going from a tax-exempt lease purchase agreement to a tax-exempt contingent rent structure. So, and again, generally because of that cost differential, a lot of governments just opt for the standard tax-exempt lease purchase agreement because it is cheaper, because they can afford more of a project associated with that type of structure. But again, there may be various reasons that a government entity chooses to go for the contingent rent structure. So, you know, market conditions change, rates change. It's sort of a variable, but there is a premium in general speaking, you know, 50, 70 basis points, perhaps less, perhaps more. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Thank you, Jeff.
You
The
bet.
next question I'll direct to Elisa because I think it follows up on something she mentioned in her presentation. It said there are no change orders to the project, and therefore the project is a fixed cost. Is this a requirement in North Carolina?
So I'll thank you, Graham. Yes, in North Carolina, we do have a fixed price, no change order requirement. Therefore, when you are finalizing your contract and borrowing the money, that project is fixed. And again, if there are change orders, if you wanted to add something, that would be on the customer only, but the ESCO, which is the Energy Services Company, cannot do any change orders at all. So that is part of what's good for you, the unit, is that you know exactly what it's going to cost you, and you know that you're not going to get change orders. And if something is missed, which has happened in my 29-year career, the ESCO is responsible for taking care of that at no cost to the customer.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, definitely a great risk mitigation factor of this program. The next one I will direct to Kim. It says, will existing system deficiencies be addressed as part of the ECMs?
You are muted, Kim.
Thank you, Natalie. Sorry about that. What I would say is, yes, you have to look at it again, because these projects are driven by the energy efficiency. And so you have to look at what does it take to address those deficiencies, but those definitely need to be addressed with, discussed with the customer to determine how to best proceed. So, but, in general, you want to address any system deficiencies as much as possible as part of VCM if you can fund it effectively. And so these are a collaborative process. So as we evaluate facilities, those are things that you actually have to work through as part of the project. Does anybody else have anything to add?
No, I think you're spot on. The next question I can handle is ongoing O&M part of the ESCO contract. So yes, there's an O&M plan that is a part of the standard template documents in the investment grade audit for your project. And it can be customized to the needs of the customer. So sometimes for the more experienced customers, they have more expertise in-house. If they feel comfortable handling the O&M responsibilities, and typically it's just the standard manufacturer's recommendations, then they'll take accountability for that in-house. On the flip side, if you don't feel like your team is going to be able to handle the O&M responsibilities, the ESCO can include a maintenance contract for you that's funded through the savings that allows them to take that risk off of the unit's plate. So the next one I'll go back to Jeff. Can ESCO projects be financed from financing entities of our choice?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Graham? I missed
Yeah,
the
no
end.
problem. Can ESCO projects be financed from financing entities of our choice?
Sure, right? So again, in general, a lot of times there will be a procurement process. So your municipal advisor or placement agent or another party may run a solicitation for the financing, and the customer ultimately will decide who finances the project, and they may work with their municipal financial advisor, bond counsel, tax advisor, on that selection. So all of this, right, is at the procurement and the selection and choice of the actual issuer, governmental issuer, in selecting their ESCO partner and their financing partner.
Can I add to that, Graham? It's Elisa.
Please.
Yeah, so I want to add to what Jeff has just stated. You will, depending on your ESCO that you select, some of them expect you to do the request for proposal for financial entities to respond to your project, but many ESCOs also will help you with that. And you will put out a request for proposal for financing of your project, which is part of this process that we've all talked about. And you don't have to pick lowest interest rate. You can pick your entity. They may have different payments in arrears in advance, how the interest rates are compounded, different items. So you will review all of the ones that you receive, and then you will select, as Jeff said, you will select the entity that you want that best fits that unit's needs.
Yeah, great points there. So this one could be a little bit of a roundtable, I think, for all the folks on the line. What is a typical minimum total project cost to be eligible for ESPC? Maybe we can start with Kim.
Not hearing her.
I guess I'll jump in. That's kind of hard to say, but I will say that, you know, these are typically larger projects. So if you're just looking to do one or two ECMs or energy conservation measures, this probably isn't the best fit for you. But if you've got kind of a full package of different types of ECMs that have, like I mentioned, longer paybacks, shorter paybacks, and they can all kind of come together in a package, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, is if you can really bundle as many different types of ECMs as possible. It's hard to put a value on that. I don't know. I'll let some of the other panelists speak to that.
It's Elisa again. And Natalie, I'll chime in behind you. It also depends on the appetite for the ESCOs, because some energy services companies have thresholds that they will not go below. It costs almost just as much to do a $500,000 project as it does a $5 million project. So you have different appetites with different energy services companies. So I did want to add that in. But you know, these days, as much as utilities are rising, you do see much bigger projects than we did many years ago. And in North Carolina too, you want to get all your bang for your buck. Like Natalie just said, you want to gather everything you can that self-funds, and that will be part of when you select your partner, is selecting that project. And you will go through together, work together what project funds. So a project may fund for 20 million, but by the time you pick the things that you need desperately or politically, or that you've got R22s that are going out and you've got to get that all replaced within a certain time, that may change the way that your project looks. So it could change, you know, instead of being a 20 million, it may be a 18, or it could be a 22 million. So the sizes of the projects change, but you'll also have to look at the appetite for the energy services company, if you do have a small one, if they're willing to look at the smaller ones.
Yeah, and to provide some historical context as well, I think the smallest project I've seen in the state of North Carolina over the last 10 years or so was around $1.6 million. And that was a unit of government whose total utility spend was somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 annually between electricity, gas, fuel oil, and water. So just to provide some additional context there to help folks verify if they're eligible.
That was helpful, Graham. That was very helpful.
All right. The next question I've got, and I may direct this to the state energy office and get their perspective before getting the ESCO perspective, is one common concern I hear from peers that implemented ESCO projects is M&V. How do we ensure reliable M&V?
Yeah, so M&V is a big part of performance contracting, and it's a really important piece of the puzzle. Part of our job at the State Energy Office is to, in our annual update to the legislature, is to report on whether the savings we're presenting have been verified by a third-party reviewer, and to really walk through each of those performance contracts to make sure that that piece of the puzzle has happened. And as we've discussed at length here, if there is a deficiency in savings, that is credited back to the customer by the ESCO. So it is absolutely guaranteed. I know that can be a little almost sound too good to be true, but that is the great part about performance contracting is these are guaranteed savings, and there is a process in place to implement when those savings are lacking, and there's actual checks that are written for those deficiencies if that is the case. So I don't know if Hayward wanted to add anything to that.
No, Nelly did a great job. One thing I would add is during the with the IGA process or just throughout the whole process, we will be involved. So whatever entity that it is, where with the ESCO and the third party reviewer throughout the process, gaining information. By the time the project goes under construction and everything is kind of complete, you should have a pretty good working relationship. You'll have documents and you get of course, a yearly update of any processes or any agreements that took place prior to. So to answer the question, I do believe it's very reliable. I don't think you should have an issue, and if you do, usually the responsibility falls on ESCO for that process.
Hayward, I was going to chime behind you, Hayward, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Also, when you're selecting your project, as Hayward said, when you're going through the investment grade audit phase, that's where you're actually going to select your energy conservation measures to make sure that that's what you want as the entity. But the whole time you're going through this, the key to this is the energy office as well as your third party owner's rep or your third party reviewer. So you will actually go out and solicit for that, and their fee is all encumbered in this project as well. So it's no upfront money for you, but it's key to selecting someone that you can work with well in your third party reviewer. So they will help you select the right M&V plans, because it could be very different. If you're doing a whole building remodel, you may be doing a option C, or you may be doing a modeling simulation. And then if you're doing just lighting, it could be an A or B. So you're going to get different protocols throughout your whole project. So it's not one set protocol. And then your third party reviewer is really going to help you with that, and also selecting your ECMs that make sure that's what you, the entity, want, and it's going to work for you. And that's why a minute ago I was saying your project sizes could change. It may be that you need windows in versus putting something else in. So you may have to make that choice, and that may change the different energy conservation measures that you select. But again, that should be a team approach or a partner approach with your third party reviewer, with UC, with your ESCO, and yourself.
Yeah, and to dig a little deeper, so the state of North Carolina requires you to use one of 4 options that are laid out in the International Protocol for Measurement and Verification. And so those are options A through D, as Elisa referenced, and each of them have different recommendations as to when to be used. And so a key thing, even before the investment grade audit, is to evaluate what your specific unit of government would like to see from an M&V perspective, because your option C is an at the meter measurement and verification, and different ESCOs have different approaches to what options they're willing to do and which ones they're not. So you definitely want to make sure that you understand what those options are, and then select a partner that's going to implement an M&V program that meets your expectations. Kim, it looks like maybe rejoined. Kim, any more comments on M&V? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to pass the next question back to the State Energy Office. It says, the first step is to have an energy audit performed at the institution, correct? In this case, we are a community college.
So I think the first step is kind of making the business case for it. So if you are just kind of new to all this and just interested in learning if you have a good project or a good scope, definitely talk to us at the State Energy Office. Look at the qualified provider list, start talking to some of the ESCOs, bringing them in really early into the conversation, long before any type of investment grade audit is even considered, to just have a conversation with us and with them, to learn more about, you know, what your needs are, more about your facilities, because it's very site specific. So it's impossible to say right now if you're a good fit. So it's going to involve just some kind of introductory conversations about who you are, what you're looking for, the nature of your facilities, the age of some of your equipment. Just having some of those really basic conversations to start with is really the best place to begin those conversations. And, you know, if it makes sense to continue and to get more serious with the process, then it by all means can go that direction. But I think you'll quickly learn if it's a good fit for you from those early conversations.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was actually really good, Natalie. And I add that during that process, you know, over time, you want to kind of, you know, identify projects that you have need of and things in that nature, and just dealing with, you know, if it's an energy audit in itself, if you have that capability, you know, maybe before to kind of assess to bring it to management or any of the stakeholders involved, you know, that might be good. Um, but in general, definitely just start digging, ask questions, the energy office, even the ESCOs will walk you through the process and identify any of those energy uses that could be used by ECMs.
And Hayward, could I add behind you, so Lisa? And truthfully, believe it or not, the ESCOs, I mean, they're willing to look at it, see if it's even feasible. And in the 29 years I've been doing this, the ESCOs will tell you it's not worth your time and effort too, if it doesn't look feasible for you. So Natalie brought up, and so did Hayward, about a feasibility study, and you can get one of those feasibility studies to see before you take it before a full board, or, you know, before you make it a well-known thing, that you want to see if it's even feasible for your entity to look at this avenue. So again, like Natalie and Hayward said, there's a list of 12 that are certified now. They're getting ready to have the recertification. You know, you can talk to any of those, as well as, you know, utilize UC as much as you can, because they are very helpful.
I would also just add again that there's so much value in, we mentioned this earlier, in talking to your peers. So if there's another community college that has been through this process, which there are, and if you don't know who those are, feel free to reach out and we can give you some contacts. Talk to them about their experience and how things went for them. There's so much value in that, and that should definitely be a part of those early conversations, is talking to your peers who have done this exact process and how things went for them. And even if it was some time ago, there's still some continuity in the process over the years. So getting some input from those folks who have done it and who have gone through this process is really important.
And it looks like we are to our last question, which I'm happy to handle. What happens if the ECMs prescribed by the ESCO are not of interest to the institution? Is there a prescribed process? So typically what happens when you start an investment grade audit is listed in the investment grade audit contract are all of the different energy conservation measures that the institution would like the ESCO to investigate. And then there are several meetings throughout the investment grade audit in which the ESCO comes back with additional information about the energy conservation measures, and the institution is able to make a decision as to which ones to continue developing and which ones not to. And then once you get to the end of the investment grade audit, everything that you've wanted the ESCO to develop to 100%, to where you have final cost and final savings associated with the measure, the institution can sit there with the ESCO and UC and turn different project scenarios on and off to get to a final self-funding project that is the scope that's been specifically selected by the institution. So at the end of the day, the institution is 100% responsible for the final scope within their project. And it looks like we've had a couple more questions come in, and since we've got 10 minutes, I may go ahead and pass those along. So the next one is, can ESCO pricing be transparent? ECM costs / markups for comprehensive evaluation. Natalie and Hayward, do you want to talk about the pricing tools that we use in the state templates?
Actually, go ahead, Graham. You can take that one.
Okay. So both during the RFP phase and the investment grade audit phase, the State Energy Office has created an open book pricing tool that the ESCOs are required to use. So you're going to see costs and savings associated with each ECM, and then you're going to have all of the different markups, if you will, in the question. It's really more so the design fees. So you have engineering, general conditions, project management, overhead and profit. All of that is laid out for you in a standard template that you'll see both at the RFP phase, in which those numbers are negotiable from the institution, as well as we carry those same numbers forward into the investment grade audit phase. So open book pricing is required by the state.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. And then it looks like our last question is, most of the time, the ECMs don't impact entire HVAC systems. How are O&M responsibilities separated between systems affected by ESCOs and those not? Is there anyone who wants to jump on this? Or I'm happy to take it, but
I mean, my initial take is that's really the ESCO's responsibility to determine how that's all going to play out in terms of the ECMs that do impact certain parts of an HVAC system and those that don't. That's really their responsibility to kind of build that scope and make sure that the project is set up for success in that regard.
Natalie, so Lisa, I'm going to add right behind that too. Like I alluded to earlier too, you may be doing a lot of different energy conservation measures in one particular building, and it may make sense for that building to go on option C, which is on the meter, where you can actually see that. Or you may be doing just lighting in a certain area, and that may be option A. And these are the protocols that Graham talked about earlier. And this is part of when, like Natalie said, when you're working with your ESCO, you will actually determine what is best for each ECM or building. So those are determined together with your third-party owner's rep reviewer. They'll help you decide what is the best protocol for each energy conservation measure and how it impacts that building. It could be, again, like I said, a building simulation. It could be it could be a combination of A and B, depending on if it's just controls. So each measure, as well as the total project and the total building that's getting renovations, it'll determine how each one of those ECMs are monitored and verified.
yeah, and as a part of that O&M plan that I told you is required to be in the investment grade audit contract, the only O&M responsibilities that an institution will have is related to the ECMs that were installed with the performance contract. So if there's a system that is not a part of the performance contract, it hasn't been touched by the performance contract, there are no O&M responsibilities outside of just maintaining whatever standards of comfort you agreed to with your ESCO. And by standards of comfort, I mean set points, schedules, humidity, those sorts of things.
That's a great point.
All right, good deal. I think that's the end of Q&A. So I'll turn it back to Natalie and Hayward to close things out.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Those were some great questions, some really good discussion. If you have any questions that come up, you'll have all of our contact information in the slides that we'll send out, hopefully before the holiday weekend. And again, we really appreciate all of the time that you took this morning. This is a complex topic, but I think with the combination of all of our experiences, we have a lot to learn from each other and can find some good pathways to get these projects implemented. So thank you again to everybody, and thank you to all the panelists. And we will be in touch soon with the recording and the slides. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.